Now, you know, there are places in this country where this just means hello. Places where they've never heard of a little Traverse Bay, and they've never used their lifeline to show you how to get from Lansing to Saginaw. And those folks, the thumb, well, it's just a thumb. Now, but to me, this represents the finest place on this earth. The largest body of fresh water, unique in all the world. Crazy people like myself, well, we came here and we stayed because there's a kind of a power and a beauty about this place you don't find anywhere else, you know. Schooner captains like myself, we could tell you a thing or two if you had the courage to ask us, but I've slept and I've woken, and in the middle of each and every one of these beauties, I've seen the fury of her storms, I've seen the folly of those who took them for granted. The lakes here, they've been the life and the death of millions before us. Well, you know that, but now you see what I think is that we still share this place with every one of those that went before us here. All the tribes of the Huron and the Ojibwa and the Potawatomi who made this place, this watery peninsula of ours, a home for themselves in a way that folks like myself of European stock can never really understand. And the crazy French voyageurs, the mad randy loggers, the hardy settlers, who lived each moment as if it might be their last. And for many of the bravest, the end did come the fastest. Well, now you might think I'm crazy, or you might think that I'm telling you ghost stories, but these folks and how they live their lives, well, that has a lot to do with what this place is today and what it might become tomorrow. Now, I'm not talking about the folks you're going to meet in your history books, or if they are in your history books, the dried-out names and the dried-out faces will bear very little resemblance to the rough and tumble people they really were. Now, you're lucky. You're going to get to meet a few of them right here today. And you might think they're ghosts, but I'm telling you that their jokes and their songs and their stories and their laughter, well, they're just as real as any of you living and breathing out here today. You can feel it in the rhythm and the echo of the drums. That is, if you got any imagination at all. What must they have thought of us, eh? The first white folks who showed up on the soils of these Native Americans. Now, you know, the first two Frenchmen that ever saw this grand body of water of ours, well, they're Brulé, their name's Brulé and Nicolet. In about 1609, 1610, 1611, they came down probably the St. Lawrence Seaway, no one's sure, and they first saw the Georgian Bay, and they said, that's a great body of water, and they sailed out past that into what they thought was the ocean. We called it Lake Huron. They sailed due west past a little island they called Michigan, and due on past that into the sunset to what they thought was going to be China. And Nicolet, who had the first large boat and large group of men to go across, now, they went a little farther. He brought with him fine silk robes and kimonos, you know, because when they saw the land at the far western shore, they donned their fine kimonos and over their dirty oilskins, and they fired off their cannons to greet the great kings and queens of Cathay, little realizing they were in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Now, you know, when the English were barely eking out an existence on the rocky coast of New England, the French had already penetrated 1,500 miles inland. They were living in the native villages, trapping, fur trading. And then one day, a treaty signed by men thousands of miles away that these folks had never even heard of. And all of a sudden, the land's English. Then it's American. The first Englishman to come across here and see the far ends of Lake Superior was a fella named George Stuntz. He was a visionary. He was an interesting fella, and when he first came here, he found one non-Native American living in a little town called Duluth at the far end of the lakes. That one man was Stephen Bonga. He worked for the American Fur Company, you know. Like many black men at that time, Stephen Bonga found fortitude and freedom in the solitary life of a fur trader. Oh, yes, visionaries like George Stuntz. They saw cities where we just see mountains. They saw empires where we saw wilderness. Well, stories began to circulate all over back east about the wonders of Michigan. The great bountiful catch of game, the good cheap land. Some folks took it a little too far. Some enterprising realtors, for example, they started sending back little cards, painted cards, little towns, little Michigan towns that, of course, didn't exist. They're just swampland. And in these towns, they had paved brick streets on the postcards. They had little pink and blue buildings. And they had a little church with a little spire on the top, don't you know? Well, they came, and they didn't find any fine little towns. They didn't find any brick streets. They didn't find any spires on the little steeples. All they found was swamps and mosquitoes and mud up to your, here.
Come on, you go to Michigan now. Oh, so this is paradise. I guess I couldn't tell. Come on, you go to Michigan, Michigan,